For decades, the world has known Dolly Parton as a shining symbol of talent, resilience, and unwavering grace. But behind the bright stage lights and legendary success, a deeply personal story remained hidden from public view. That silence was shattered when one of Dolly's own sisters finally stepped forward, revealing details that few outside the family had ever heard. What followed was not a tale of fame or fortune, but a powerful account of heartbreak, sacrifice, and the moments that shaped one of America's most beloved icons forever. Before we uncover the full story, tell us what you think. Has Dolly Parton's remarkable success come more from talent, determination, or the struggles she overcame behind the scenes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy uncovering the untold stories behind legendary figures, please subscribe. Stella Parton refused to whisper, the sister who refused to stay silent. Long before the spotlight followed the Parton name across America, Stella Parton had already learned a lesson that would shape the rest of her life. If you wanted to be heard, you had to find your voice and use it. Growing up in Sevierville, Tennessee, was never easy. Born on the 4th of May, 1949, Stella was the 6th of 12 children raised by Robert Lee Parton Sr. and Avi Lee Parton. Their home was crowded, money was limited, and privacy was almost impossible. In a family that large, every day was filled with noise, laughter, struggle, and determination. It was an environment that produced strong personalities, and Stella became one of them. While many knew Stella simply as Dolly Parton's younger sister, her journey was uniquely her own. Raised in a family where music shaped everyday life, she performed from an early age. By 7, she was appearing with Dolly on a Knoxville television show, and soon afterward entered radio, achieving milestones few children from rural East Tennessee could have imagined. Years later, when Stella finally spoke openly about her journey, what emerged was not a tale of living in someone else's shadow. It was the story of persistence. As a teenager, she began writing songs, but adulthood arrived quickly. Marriage, motherhood, and daily responsibilities demanded attention. For a time, music became something she squeezed into the margins of life rather than the center of it. Yet the dream never disappeared. In 1967, she recorded In the Garden, a gospel album created with her mother and sisters, Willadine and Cassie. Later, she moved to Washington, D.C., performing at Hillbilly Heaven, a modest venue where success was far from guaranteed. Night after night, she worked without promises, relying only on talent and determination. Then came a turning point. In 1975, instead of waiting for an opportunity, Stella created one herself. Launching her own label, Soul, Country, and Blues Records, she released I Want to Hold You in My Dreams Tonight. The gamble paid off. The song climbed into the country top 10, reaching number 9, and opening doors that had once seemed unreachable. What really happened was simple yet remarkable. Stella Parton never waited for permission to tell her story. She told it herself. Stella Parton's willingness to speak out didn't begin when the spotlight found her. Years earlier, she took a stand in a controversy most preferred to avoid. What compelled her to risk criticism for a cause that offered no personal reward? And how did that defining moment shape the outspoken voice the world would later come to know? Let's find out. Stella Parton's earliest bold stand. Long before anyone was paying close attention to her words, Stella Parton was already showing the kind of courage that would define her life. At just 26 years old, she stepped into one of Nashville's most uncomfortable debates and chose a side few others dared to support. While criticism surrounded Australian singer Olivia Newton-John for receiving recognition in country music, Stella quietly answered with a song called Ode to Olivia. There was no promise of fame, no career advantage, and no pressure to get involved. She simply believed that staying silent was the wrong choice. That decision revealed something important about Stella long before the public fully understood her. Decades later, when people wondered why she was willing to speak openly about difficult subjects, the answer could be found in moments like that, standing up for what she believed had always been part of who she was. Yet her story was never limited to a single act of courage. While much of the world knew her as Dolly Parton's younger sister, Stella spent years building a career that belonged to her alone. During the late 1970s, she enjoyed a string of successful country hits, including The Danger of a Stranger, Standard Lie No. 1, and Four Little Letters. Her success even reached audiences in the United Kingdom, proving that listeners were responding to her talent rather than her family name. Stella's career gained momentum with recordings alongside other artists and the release of Steady as the Rain, written by Dolly. By 1980, she had built a loyal audience and a respected music career. Beyond music, she worked in New York theater, appeared on television, and joined family-related projects. Over the years, she released numerous albums and more than 24 charting singles, achievements earned through dedication, talent, and persistence. Still, despite everything she accomplished, one label followed her everywhere: Dolly's little sister. What really happened, though, is far more interesting. Behind that introduction stood a determined woman who spent 5 decades proving that her voice was always her own. Stella Parton spent decades speaking her mind, refusing to hide behind expectations or anyone else's fame. So what happened in the autumn of 2025 that convinced her to speak out about Dolly? And why did her remarks leave many wondering if a deeper story had been hidden in plain sight all along? Let's uncover the astonishing details. Stella Parton finally breaks silence. There are moments when silence says everything. And then there are moments when someone finally decides that staying quiet is no longer possible. For decades, Stella Parton built a reputation on speaking her mind, whether people welcomed it or not. She never shaped her words to fit expectations, and that is exactly why her comments in the autumn of 2025 captured so much attention. When Stella finally spoke about her sister Dolly, many realized there was a deeper story unfolding behind the public smiles. Long before those conversations began, Stella had already spent a lifetime proving she would not live in anyone else's shadow. While many only knew her as Dolly Parton's sister, she continued recording music, performing for loyal fans, and earning recognition across places such as New Zealand, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Pennsylvania. Her career brought honors, including being named Female Vocalist of the Year by the Christian Country Music Association in 2004. Yet awards were never what made her stand out. People remembered her because she spoke openly about poverty, domestic violence, politics, and the challenges women faced in the music industry. Whether audiences agreed with her or not, they rarely doubted her sincerity. That honesty gave unusual weight to her words when concern began growing around Dolly. Stella had never been the family member responsible for protecting an image or managing public perception. She was simply someone who believed difficult truths should not remain hidden forever. The story behind those concerns stretched back months earlier to a loss that changed everything. In March of 2025, Dolly said goodbye to the man who had quietly stood beside her for nearly 6 decades. Carl Dean had been a mystery to much of the world from the very beginning. After meeting Dolly outside a Nashville laundromat when she was just 18 years old, he chose a life far away from cameras and headlines. While Dolly became one of the most recognized entertainers in America, Carl remained the private center of her world. When he passed away at the age of 82, The impact reached far beyond public view. Dolly later admitted that years spent caring for her seriously ill husband had left little room to care for herself. As grief settled over the family, Stella's decision to finally speak out was not about creating drama. It was about helping people understand what was really happening behind the scenes during one of the most difficult periods of Dolly Parton's life. For decades, Dolly Parton's smile seemed to hide every hardship. But was there a deeper struggle unfolding beyond the spotlight? And what finally led her sister Stella to reveal a story that would change how many viewed Dolly's most difficult chapter? Keep watching. Stella reveals Dolly's hidden struggles. For years, the public saw the familiar smile, the quick wit, and the unstoppable energy that seemed to define Dolly Parton. Even when challenges appeared, she carried herself with the same warmth that had made millions admire her. Yet behind that image, a far more difficult story was unfolding, one that her sister Stella would eventually feel compelled to explain. By the autumn of 2025, Dolly was facing a season of life marked by profound personal loss. The woman the world knew as a tireless performer was also a widow, mourning a husband of nearly 6 decades, while carrying the emotional weight of multiple family tragedies. In only a few years, the Parton family had lost 3 brothers. For a family that had once crowded 12 children into a small Tennessee home, those losses were not simply numbers. They were pieces of a shared childhood disappearing one by one, leaving behind memories that could never be replaced. As questions grew about Dolly's health and well-being, Stella finally offered a clearer picture of what had really been happening. Her words were not dramatic accusations or attempts to attract sympathy. Instead, they painted a portrait of a woman who had spent years putting everyone else first. According to Stella, Dolly had devoted herself to caring for loved ones and, in the process, often neglected her own needs. Even when warning signs appeared, she pushed forward because someone else seemed to need attention more urgently than she did. The impact reached beyond Dolly alone. Stella openly acknowledged that grief had touched every corner of the family. The losses were so overwhelming that her own creative work came to a halt. For 7 years, she released no new songs, later describing that period simply as years shaped by sorrow and absence. Rather than hide those feelings, she spoke honestly about them and about the importance of finding moments of laughter amid heartbreak. Looking back, one event now seems far more significant than many realized at the time. In late September of 2025, Dolly postponed her Las Vegas residency, citing health challenges. For an artist whose career had stretched across 6 remarkable decades with very few cancellations, it was an unusual decision. Yet many fans saw it as a temporary setback. Stella's reflections suggest otherwise. The signs had been there all along. The difference is that while the world focused on Dolly's smile, her family could see the burden she had quietly been carrying. A brief request for prayers seemed harmless at first, yet it sparked questions across the country almost overnight. What made Frida Parton's simple message trigger such widespread concern? And how did a few carefully chosen words ignite a wave of speculation that no one anticipated? Let's unravel the details. Frida's prayer request sparks concern. A simple request for prayers was all it took to set off a wave of concern that nobody in the Parton family seemed to expect. In early October, while fans were still following every update about Dolly Parton after the heartbreaking loss of her husband, her younger sister Frida quietly shared a brief message online asking people to pray for Dolly. There were no details, no medical explanation, and no dramatic warning. Yet because the message came from a member of one of America's most beloved families, it immediately drew intense attention. What followed was a remarkable example of how quickly uncertainty can grow. Within hours, The post spread across social media and entertainment websites. As people searched for answers, assumptions began filling the gaps left by the lack of information. Concern turned into speculation, and speculation soon transformed into alarming rumors. Many fans feared the worst, despite having no confirmed facts to support those fears. Just as the conversation seemed to be spiraling beyond control, another voice from the family entered the discussion. Dolly's sister Stella publicly acknowledged the concern and encouraged people to remember what Dolly had already shared in previous updates. Her comments were calm and thoughtful, but they also confirmed that the worries circulating online were not entirely imagined. For many followers, hearing a second sister speak about the situation made the uncertainty feel even more significant. As the attention continued to grow, Dolly decided it was time to address the matter herself. During a commercial shoot for the Grand Ole Opry, she recorded a direct message to her fans. With the warmth and humor that have defined her career, she immediately eased fears by joking, "I ain't dead yet." She even stated the date on camera so there could be no confusion about when the message was recorded. Then Dolly explained what had really happened. She admitted that after her husband's passing, she had not been taking the best care of herself. She revealed that she had canceled a few commitments, stayed closer to home, and received treatment for an issue she described as nothing major. The response was immediate relief. Soon afterward, Frida clarified that her original post had simply been a sister asking for prayers, never intending to spark fear. In the end, what really happened was far less dramatic than the rumors, but it revealed just how deeply people care about Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton continued to project the warmth and confidence the world had come to expect. But was that cheerful image hiding a growing concern? And what did those closest to her notice long before the public realized something might be wrong? Stay tuned. Dolly's sisters saw it first. A misunderstanding, a fiercely protective family, and a woman determined to convince the world that everything was under control. For months, that was the story most people accepted. Dolly Parton appeared cheerful, witty, and remarkably resilient, offering smiles and laughter whenever cameras were near. To the public, she seemed exactly as she had always been. Yet behind that reassuring image, a very different concern was quietly taking shape among those who knew her best. Long before most people sensed anything unusual, two women who had spent their entire lives beside Dolly felt uneasy enough to speak openly about it. Their concerns did not come from gossip, speculation, or headlines. They came from seeing the reality up close, from witnessing moments hidden from public view. At the time, many dismissed those worries as the natural fears of an overprotective family. Looking back now, their words carry a far greater weight. As the months passed, small clues continued to appear. None seemed alarming on their own. Each was easy to overlook, softened by Dolly's trademark humor and unwavering determination. The pieces never arrived all at once. Instead, they emerged gradually, scattered across interviews, appearances, and casual remarks that seemed insignificant in the moment. When Dolly celebrated her 80th birthday in January, Tennessee honored her extraordinary legacy by officially recognizing the 19th of January as Dolly Parton Day. It was a joyful tribute to a woman whose music, generosity, and influence had touched countless lives. Yet viewed from another angle, it also felt like a moment of reflection, a recognition of a remarkable journey that had already spanned generations. Then, in March, Dolly stepped back into the public spotlight for the opening of Dollywood's 41st season in Tennessee. She charmed the crowd effortlessly, joking with fans and displaying the warmth that had always defined her. She spoke candidly about spending time away from touring, mentioned a few health issues that were being addressed, and reflected on the difficult process of healing after the loss of Carl. Even her playful jokes carried hints of a deeper reality. What seemed reassuring on the surface was, perhaps, something more significant. By May, those scattered signs were becoming much harder to ignore, and the questions surrounding what was really happening began to grow louder than ever. Dolly Parton's career continued to dominate headlines, but a far more personal struggle was unfolding out of public view. What really led to her difficult decision to step away from the stage, and how did a series of private health battles begin reshaping her future? Let's uncover the intriguing details. Dolly's hidden struggle behind success. While many people were focused on the headlines surrounding Dolly Parton's career, a quieter story was unfolding behind the scenes, one that would only become clearer much later. Questions grew after Dolly made the difficult decision to cancel her long-awaited Caesars Palace residency, a show that had already been moved from December 2025 to September 2026. In a heartfelt video message, she explained that ongoing struggles with kidney stones, along with challenges affecting her immune and digestive systems, had forced her to step back while doctors worked to help her regain her strength. Yet even in the middle of those health battles, Dolly revealed she was still pushing forward with her Broadway project, determined not to let setbacks define her future. At almost the same moment, her sister Stella Parton quietly shared news that seemed unrelated at first. After 7 years away from creating new music, she announced that she had finally found the inspiration to write again. The reason for her long silence was deeply personal. Stella described those years as a period marked by grief, loss, and profound change. Rather than dwelling on sorrow, however, she chose to channel those experiences into songs centered on resilience and hope. What makes Stella's words so striking today is not simply what she said, but when she said it. She spoke candidly about watching loved ones disappear from her life while witnessing difficult changes across the nation she cared about. Unwilling to soften her views or change her voice, she remained committed to expressing herself honestly, just as she had throughout more than 5 decades in music. At 77, she made it clear she had no intention of becoming someone different. Then came her song, "Stand By Me," followed by a series of interviews in June. There, Stella reflected on how her family had survived years of hardship, often returning to 2 guiding principles: laughter and perspective. Looking back now, those conversations feel less like ordinary reflections and more like a sister finally explaining what really happened behind the public headlines, a family quietly carrying burdens while finding the strength to move forward together. Dolly Parton's smile convinced the world that everything was under control, yet her family had already sensed a different reality. What were they quietly witnessing behind the scenes? And why did they understand the truth long before the headlines ever appeared? Let's find out. Dolly's hidden burden finally revealed. There are moments when a family quietly understands something long before the rest of the world is ready to face it. For Dolly Parton's family, that moment arrived long before the headlines, long before the tributes, and long before millions of fans realized how much she had been carrying behind her famous smile. For decades, the world saw Dolly as unstoppable. She seemed untouched by time, endlessly generous, endlessly energetic, and always ready with a joke that could brighten even the darkest day. Yet behind the spotlight stood a woman facing losses few people fully understood. She had spent years caring for her husband, Carl Dean, while navigating her own health struggles, often placing her needs far behind those she loved. Months before her passing, concern had already begun to surface within the family. Some relatives spoke cautiously about their worries, but their words were met with reassurance. Dolly herself eased fears with humor, and many people chose to believe everything was fine. It was easier that way. Looking back, those concerns were not mistaken. They simply came before everyone else was prepared to hear them. Then came her final public update in August. Dolly admitted she had endured difficult health challenges and acknowledged that she had neglected her own well-being while focusing on Carl. Still, she remained hopeful, insisting she was healing and continuing her work. Those words became a source of comfort for countless fans who believed there was still plenty of time ahead. But on Tuesday, August 25, 2026, that hope was shattered. Dolly Rebecca Parton. Dean passed away peacefully at Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center in Nashville following a brief battle with cancer. She was 80 years old. The news was delivered by her nephew, Brian Siver, through a heartfelt video recorded for a moment she had prepared for years earlier. As tributes poured in, attention quietly returned to Stella Parton's silence. Without dramatic revelations or shocking accusations, her unspoken message became clear. Families often recognize the truth long before the world does. What really happened was not a scandal. It was the painful story of a beloved woman giving everything she had until there was nothing left to give. Now, what do you think Dolly Parton's sister finally revealed that has sparked so much curiosity? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.